Welcome, everyone. My name is John Megling. I'm the Senior System Engineer for Microsoft at Tech Data. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Better Together series, our webinar series, technical webinar series, I should say, on Windows Server 2012 and all the neat good things that are built in, all the neat new good things that are built into that. Again, as I said, it's part of our Better Together series. So when you look at it, it's part of what we're trying to do here is our people, tools, and programs. And this is part of taking the people not only with Tech Data but also Microsoft and working with you to help you get some training on our new products. So with that, I want to just show you the team that we have at Tech Data. We have a very big team, as you guys can tell. Some people are kind of surprised about how big our team is. You know, we have quite a few people dedicated to the Microsoft effort here at Tech Data. Specifically today, as part of the program you're working with, is we have two system engineers, myself, John Megling, and Alex Vasilakos, to work with you guys. So if you have questions regarding the content today, or you want to follow up in specific areas, I have a sheet that shows our contact information. We're easy to get a hold of if you ask for the Microsoft engineers, or if you call our 82031 option and hit option 2, you'll get myself or Alex. So if you want to drill down on something specific today, or they just want more information, or if you want to see a demo on something specific that maybe we didn't get to today, work with us and we'll make that happen for you. So when you look also to some of the things we do, that we can tell you about if you give us a call or if you interact with us. We do the slicer tool, which is a really nice tool that Alex put together to help you kind of find part numbers very quickly. I know part numbers are part of life. Maybe not everyone that's on this call because we're doing technical things today, but it is there, and it does help quite a bit. We do some quick reference guides. We also have a product information site. The other thing to note, too, is our Solution Center. We're currently in a remodel of the whole Solution Center, which will be reopening at the end of this month. So as you can see, we have quite a lot of stuff in the Solution Center. We also are an MEC certified distributor. So myself, Alex, or Joe are the three people that can deliver this type of content for you or your end customers. We can talk about that. If you want to talk about that, again, hit us at 82031 or just ask for the Microsoft engineers when you're talking to your sales team or your TPAM team at Tech Data, and we can work with you to talk to you about the MEC. So I want to get to the meat of why we're here today. We're going to have we've got just a great group of speakers from Microsoft. I want to thank them for doing this today, and I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Blaine so we can get to the content.
Well, thanks a lot, you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm bringing up the slide deck right now. For some reason, it disappeared. So I'm going to bring that up here real quick. Tell me when you see it.
I can see it on my end.
Yep. It's up.
I don't see it yet, so give me a second here. Is it still loading here? I don't see it on my desktop yet. There it is. All right. All right. Everybody with me?
I'm on the first slide, the very first slide. There we go. Now we're with you.
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody pushed the button and shut the slide deck down. But welcome to part 2 of 5. If you missed the first part, that was the overview of Windows Server 2012. And now we're going to talk about Hyper-V and what's new with Hyper-V with Windows Server 2012. I'm your host on this part of the technical presentation. I'm Blaine Barton, a Senior IT Pro Evangelist with Microsoft. There's my email address. I'm not afraid to put my email address right up front. As you can see, blainebar@microsoft.com, so use me as a resource. We also have two guests that are sharing the 5-part series. We have Rowan Daly, who's a PFE, a Premier Field Engineer down in South Florida. And then we have Mr. Adnan Cartwright, Superstar, Road Warrior, MVP for Windows Server 2012. So we're going to be talking with those individuals throughout the 5-part series, and they're going to be presenting some content along the way. So once again, there's Rowan, Senior PFE, as well as Adnan Cartwright. So let's get into what we're going to be talking about for the content here, is what's new with Hyper-V. And what I thought I'd do is start out with a real high-level overview of what's changed between Windows Server 2008 R2 and Windows Server 2012 as far as virtualization and Hyper-V 3.0 and kind of our expanded processor memory support. So I thought that'd be a great place to start. So let's dive right in. As you can see here, we've got the Windows Server 2008 R2 and the Windows Server 2012. And then out here, we're probably going to have a thing called, R2. But that's down the road here coming. We'll be looking at that. Maybe towards the end of part 5, we'll take a look at R2. But first thing I want to do is kind of cover the host. You'll see there's lots of differences here with logical processors on the hard metal, bare metal host. You'll see it's 64 with Windows Server 2012. We've expanded that to 320 logical processors on hardware. Physical memory on bare metal, 1 terabyte, 4 terabytes, big improvement there. And then I always kind of go for the kind of the meat and potatoes here, this 16 times X here. We got virtual processors per virtual machine, went from 4 to 64 virtual processors per VM with Hyper-V 3.0. We also have a big stat here where we see virtual processors per host at 512. We went all the way up to 2048. Big improvement there. Virtual machine memory from 64 gigs to 1 terabyte in size. And then also active virtual machines per server on bare metal at 1024, 64 nodes in a cluster, and 8,000 virtual machines running in a cluster. So that's pretty impressive. So what I thought I'd do also, not just showing you the difference between Windows Server 2008 R2, comparing that to Windows Server 2012, is take a quick look at how we kind of stack up to VMware. I know that we have a lot of people out there using VMware, and I have to admit that back in the day when we introduced Hyper-V 1.0, it was kind of like a toy, so to speak. I mean, it was used as part of our virtualization portfolio, if you will, in our products. But we had a lot of work to do, and in the last 3-4 years, we really made leaps and bounds in the virtualization within Hyper-V 3.0 within Windows Server 2012. So I thought I'd take a moment here to kind of show you how it stacks up. Never mind the one here in the middle. That is the VMware vSphere Hypervisor. That is free. We also have a Hyper-V server, and that's all you get is Hyper-V, and that is free as well. So without talking about the VMware vSphere Hypervisor is just a standalone hypervisor. It's all you get. Let's compare Windows Server 2012 to vSphere 5.1. This was actually even released after VMworld, and it's kind of nice to know that when we look and start comparing products and features between Windows Server Hyper-V, our virtualization stack from Microsoft, and looking at VMware's vSphere and vCenter and ESXi hosts, how we can compare and stack side by side. I did recently just pass my VPC 5 certification for VMware, even though I'm a Microsoft guy, and of course working on my MCSE for 2012 currently. But it's kind of nice to have that experience to say, you know what, if we're talking about overcommit and ballooning of memory, that's VMware as opposed to dynamic memory within Windows Server Hyper-V, right? Or knowing that VMware has vMotion to move virtual machines, and we've got live migration. So stacking these up side by side, you'll see that even after they released at VMworld, we have 320 logical processors per host in Hyper-V compared to the 160. So you just kind of do some benchmarking here and see, really, we've come a long way. I'm pretty proud of the product teams for for taking on such a big endeavor and working so hard on bringing great products to market. But if it wasn't for our OEMs, if it wasn't for the hardware vendors, where we keep innovating towards the hardware type side of the business, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in the upcoming slides about, why do we move a lot of the product forward in technology is because of our OEM and hardware vendors. So that's something that I definitely want to touch on. So when we look at, the complete virtualization platform, really, what you want to kind of take a look at the big picture and see all the different working parts and components, but, providing a platform in kind of the marketing terms, provide a fully isolated multi-tenant environment that includes tools that help you guarantee a service level agreement, give you some type of enablement for chargebacks and support self-service delivery. So in these so-called silos, if you will, or pillars, you have the increased VM mobility. So remember back in part one when we discussed private cloud? Well, here Hyper-V, we're really looking at where it increases the level of mobility and flexibility in the cloud on the private side of cloud, and helps you increase the speed of things like live migration, which in turn supports the simultaneous migration of many virtual machines in a cluster. So some of the key features is the use of higher network bandwidth, up to 10 gigabit, per second to complete migrations faster and in clustered environments. And Adnan Cartwright, MVP Windows Server, has some demos at the end. If you can stick around, we're going to show you some of that. I'm going to do an intro to very basic intro to Hyper-V, and then he's going to take over and show you some of the cool features with Hyper-V itself. Live migrations that can be performed outside of a clustered environment using Server Message Box 3.0 file shares. Having the ability for the administrators to perform live migrations of a virtual machine between two standalone Hyper-V hosts when using local storage for VMs, and also multiple simultaneous live migrations. We also have this thing called storage live migration, so updating the physical the physical storage that's available to Hyper-V, and most common reason for moving a virtual machine storage. So in the past, admins could move a running instance of a virtual machine using live migration, but they couldn't move the virtual machine storage while the virtual machine was running, and that task obviously requires downtime. So, and we know that's our job, right? As system administrators and IT professionals that run back office, run workloads, our job is to mask the downtime from the end user, making this transparent, right? Also, Hyper-V in addressing this issue with new support of moving virtual machine storage while it's running. So admins can, either add storage either as a standalone system or to a Hyper-V cluster, and then move the virtual machines to the new storage while the virtual machines continue to run. So that's really awesome technology. We also have a couple of other things, including quality of service. There's quite a few features there, but when we look at quality of service, an organization can move a 1 gigabit to a 10 gigabit network adapters on the server. So NIC teaming, and it becomes increasingly important to converge all types of network traffic into a single network adapter while maintaining that performance and isolation for each one of those virtual machines running. So when we look at quality of service, a feature in Windows Server 2012 really helps meet the requirement of most converged network deployment scenarios. So QoS provides that functionality and management interfaces in addition to helping you consolidate and converge your large enterprises to new levels of quality of service. We also have things like packet schedule in Windows Server, which can enforce minimum bandwidth availability for a VM, so preventing suddenly busy VMs on a system from not monopolizing, if you will, the physical host network resources. And then, of course, what happens is it goes and starves those other VMs running on the system. So we also look at I don't know if people are talking about chargeback in their environment, but we have in some IT orgs, they need tools to report back or charge back to business units they support. So, for example, hosting providers, it's equally important to issue chargebacks based on the amount of usage generated by their customers. So, to assist with kind of more accurate, streamlined chargebacks while protecting historical information, Hyper-V really introduces a new feature that we call resource metering. So this feature, what it does is allows the creation of that cost-effective usage-based reporting or billing solutions. Resource metering, which reveals individual virtual machine usage through things like resource pools, works on all Hyper-V operations. So the movement of virtual machines between Hyper-V hosts, for example, through live or offline or even storage migrations, don't affect the collected data. So, and once again, information that can be captured can be done through resource metering, things like average CPU and memory utilization, disk space, and incoming and outgoing network traffic volume. So these are some of the things that it does, entail as we look at this complete platform. This was in a previous slide. It's just in a different form. The first one I did was the matrix of between 08 server and 2012. Now we got 2012 R2 coming out, and we'll talk more about that at the end of this series. Let's focus on what we have in the market today, but that'll be important to see that we've even this is pretty amazing what we're doing with Hyper-V 3.0 and then some with R2, right? So we'll get to that. And I'm hoping that Alex and John and JJ will bring the group back. So when we look at scale up in the VMs, 64 node Hyper-V clusters, 64 virtual processors, 1 terabyte of memory per virtual machine. Looking at the ability to do this live migration, up to new 64 terabyte VHDX format, dynamic memory and smart paging. You got a pool of VMs running. If one VM's running a SQL Server, one's running Exchange, and then you got some file and print services, some other servers running Active Directory or as a domain controller, you can set dynamic memory. So we have this big pool of memory, and the VMs will dynamically, based on the software, depend on when that workload needs to be shifted over and give that VM more density and more power to run. So dynamic memory is our friend there. We don't overcommit memory. We actually dynamically on the fly measure that dynamic memory when the need comes for that VM to take advantage of more power based on other VMs that are maybe not using that particular compute power. 8,000 virtual machines per cluster. That's crazy. Anybody doing that out there? I know we have customers that are running thousands of virtual machines out there. But that's a pretty big benchmark, 8,000 VMs per cluster. NUMA, I have a slide on NUMA. I'll just save that for the next couple slides. But it's non-uniform memory access gives better ability to handle our VMs and throughput through CPU utilization. Virtual fiber channel. It used to be put a piece of hardware in there and off you go. Now it's for fiber channel and using that hardware. Now we can virtualize the fiber channel technology and have that virtual fiber channel support. And then offloading, hardware offloading. I'm going to talk more about that in the upcoming slide. Some really cool stuff like being able to move packets back and forth between the virtual machines to communicate very, very quickly and using the network card, which the network card has a processor on it. The processor on the network card handles the workload of those virtual machines and the traffic between the VMs and their own virtual network without smacking down the CPU on the bare metal physical host. So those are really good technologies, and let's cover some of those. So we've got network adapter hardware acceleration. So that's huge. We talk about Hyper-V scalability. Offload data transfer, ODX. I'll talk about that. Support for 4K sector disk now, fiber channel in the virtual environment, SMB, improved virtual machine import. Boy, that used to be where you had to export it and then make sure all those files, snapshots and config files and virtual hard disk files, were all in their pretty little different folder configurations. and then you try to import that into Hyper-V in the Windows Server 2012 platform, and it works now. When I tried to do that with 08 server, and exporting and importing VMs, had a little bit more to be desired there. But I think they've really done a great job with, all you have to do is go to the main folder where those virtual machines are kept, and then click on that main parent folder and bring in and import those virtual machines right in Hyper-V. In fact, it does 40 plus incompatibility checks during the import wizard, and I'll get to that. And the last and final one is the VHDX disk format. So let's go into each one of these. And as you can see, I'm kind of a nerdy type, as most people on the call can contest to. But I'm getting kind of deep here with the network adapter hardware acceleration. But this is very important to cover because it changes a lot of what we've done in the past. I mean, NINDIS, if you remember the NINDIS factor of network devices in the network environment, NINDIS 6.3 kind of helps with this implementation. So when we look at the first one there, VMQ or VM queuing, what this does is it helps us to reduce, and I can show you in the interface in the demo if we got time to kind of poke around in the networking parts of the network card. If you go down to the network card, down to the advanced features area, you'll see some of these new technologies enabled. But virtual machine queue or VM queuing, so what it does is it really helps reduce the overhead of routing packets from one host to the VM, which helps improve the performance of the host operating system. And it does this by distributing the processing of network traffic for multiple VMs among multiple processors. So, why this is important, because with Windows Server 2008 R2, you had to use System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which is part of the System Center suite. So you had to use System Center VMM 2008 to enable the VM queue for a VM on a Hyper-V host, but not anymore. But now you can enable that VM queue technology directly from within the VM settings exposed through Hyper-V Manager. So once again, it's a screenshot of it right there, and I can go ahead and show you that if we've got some time. I know we got some cool demos coming up with Adnan. But when I do the basic intro to Hyper-V, you'll see that under networking, you'll see the network card. You go in there and you'll see these places where you can enable this technology. Previously, another thing is IPsec task offload as another piece here, pretty important, is the fact that previously all network traffic was handled by a single processor. Talk about bottleneck, right? So when we look at IPsec task offload, better use of the available bandwidth for an IPsec-enabled computer or computer. So now you can enable IPsec task offload directly from, once again, within the VM settings exposed through the Hyper-V Manager. Another one is, and some of these actually are mentioned on either the 70-410 exam or the 70-417 exam. I've seen some of the material talking about SR, IOV. Some of these may or may not be on the exam in some type of fashion, but they are new technologies, so be looking out for those. Single root I/O virtualization. So we look at enabling SR, IOV, enables that in your network traffic to bypass the software switch layer of Hyper-V virtualization. That's the virtualization stack. What this does is it helps reduce the I/O overhead in this layer. So by assigning SR, IOV, capable devices directly to the VM, the network performance of the VM can be nearly as good, if not better, than that of the physical machine. It's getting that way. In addition to the processing overhead on the host, that is reduced as well. So I've even seen some of the new features of being able to run VMs running VMs faster in a deduped disk situation where the data has been deduped. The actual VMs run faster, if not faster, than the physical hardware. Things are getting crazy these days, right? I mean, I remember virtual PC, virtual server, XP mode, virtual PC with Windows 7. But, I mean, when you start talking about Hyper-V and Snapshots and look at all the hardware that we can take advantage of to accelerate and get the the most bang for the buck out there. We've really leaned on our hardware vendors very hard to make sure that they produce the types of hardware that we need, but more importantly, they push back on us and rely upon us to build that software to integrate the two. By signing, once again, before you can do all this, however, the virtual switch that the VM uses must have SRIOV enabled on it. You also need to install additional network drivers in the guest operating system of the VM. We usually call this Inside Hyper-V. We call this, used to be virtual machine editions in the past, now it's called integration services. And we get a lot of things when we do a VM, or even if we import a VM from 08 server in 2012, it's probably best practice to always lay down the integration services once again, which gives us things like synchronization of time, heartbeat, backup and restore capabilities, taking advantage of NUMA and other technologies in the operating system. So one thing also that note that the SROV, by the way, the SRIOV on the virtual switch, only when you create the virtual switch using Virtual Switch Manager and Hyper-V. So best practices, always create the virtual switch first, make sure you have the hardware there, create the virtual switch, and then do all the enablement of all the configuration and provisioning after that. It's best practice. And also enables the device to divide access to its resources among various PCIe hardware functions. So how this works, once again, too, is with direct memory access. The CPU kind of initiates the transfer, does other operations while the transfer is in process, receives an interrupt from the DMA controller when the operation is done. So what happens here is, what's nice is if you're running VMs and you're using, once again, more of a processor, a dedicated processor on the network adapter card, and using IPsec encryption, decryption, making those VMs run together above that on that virtual switch in the hypervisor runs much quicker if you have the hardware to support, so you don't have calls constantly. It's helpful anytime the CPU can't keep up with the rate of data transfer, right? Or where CPUs need to perform useful work while waiting for a relative slow I/O data transfer to do its thing. So hardware is our friend here, and Windows Server 2012 takes advantage of that. So let's take a look at offload data transfer. This is pretty cool. I just saw a demo on this. We saw a new demo on it over at Tech Ed, but last year's Tech Ed, not the one in New Orleans, but the one in Orlando. Jeff Woolsey, one of our program managers for Windows Server, did a demo where he transferred, before our very eyes, a 100 gig file in about 10 seconds. But 100 gig, that was right, not a 100 MB, 100 GB, okay? And doing that in 10 seconds using ODX transfer, using a special piece of hardware, once again, called the Intelligent Storage Array. So when you migrate a VM, okay, within or between storage arrays that support ODX, the only thing copied through the servers is a little token, my friend. A token representing the VM file, not the underlying data in the file. So VM operations can benefit using ODX-capable storage hardware, things like including the expansion of dynamic VHDs, or the merging of VHDs, or live storage migration. ODX can also provide benefit for non-virtualized environments, such as when you're transferring large database files or video files between servers. So once again, you're basically doing is copying the token across while actually copying all that data at the actual data transfer layer on the Intelligent Storage Array. The next thing we got here is support for large sector disks. So we meet the demands of increased disk capacity. So we're moving the 512 byte sector format, replacing the 4 KB format. So we get a lot of benefits in the read, modify, write when writing to disk, and the buffers that are handling that, and also the cache and all these other things that we add in there. So Hyper-V 3.0 supports hosting VHD files on native 4 KB format, but we can emulate the 512-byte emulate or 512E mode is supported, and mitigates the impact when accessing data within the VHD files when updating metadata structures. So we implement that through a RW or an RMW algorithm in the VHD layer to convert that 512-byte access and update request for VHD file and the corresponding 4 KB accesses and updates. So that's a big change to support. Did I mention hardware? To move with the hardware. And when it comes with the hardware, you know, it comes with the big gains and leaps and bounds of new hardware technology. Also comes the ability to put our stuff together, to be able to import and put the software together to make it all work. So, you know, to help in the configuration, and more important, now this is cool, because the import wizard, once again I mentioned that it detects and fixes more than 40 plus types of incompatibilities, and it just works. So when I point to a folder with the 3 subfolders underneath it, I can, or simply copy those in the right structure, I can take and just use the parent file, point to the parent file, and import those virtual machines. You don't need to export them. You just need to import them, and that's a new feature. So lots of improvements there. Let's talk about VHDX, because that's huge as well. Big in the technology edition family of Windows Server 2012. The new default format for VHDs in Hyper-V 3.0, so up to 64 terabytes. That's what gives us our support for the virtual disk to 64 TB is the VHDX, and you can set up basic VHDs, but if you really want to go big, you can go with the VHDX 64 TB. Aligns with the megabyte boundaries to support the large disk sectors, what I talked about just a little bit earlier. Provides better performance, does some logging, and in a protected and corrupt fashion, it gets new log files due to a power failure, has much greater resiliency, running faster, stronger for embedded custom user-defined data that we can do in the markup language with the metadata files. So what I mean by that is you can embed custom user-defined metadata files into VHD files, for example, like information about the service pack level of like a guest OS on the VM. So this is just an example there. And then now the last slide, it's the complete virtualization platform. And that is bringing all of, today we're really focused on Hyper-V, but when you step back and you look at, the whole complete virtualization platform, Hyper-V comes with Windows Server as a role of the server, run multiple virtual networks on a physical network, but also you have the ability, and something we haven't talked about, we'll chat about it around part 5, at the very end of part 5 when we kind of introduce, maybe another series on R2, what have you. We'll talk about System Center. So System Center, when you take the best of the best, you take the private cloud Windows Server 2012, take System Center 2012 on top of that to manage all of the infrastructure. Now, you tell me one product out there where you can manage Xen servers from Citrix, VMware, ESXi hosts, as long as you have a vCenter server, and Hyper-V hypervisor, all 3 hypervisor platforms in a single pane of glass, managing all your physical, your virtual infrastructure. System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012 does that for us. So when we start looking at stepping back and saying, okay, I've got a mixed environment, how do I manage everything that I have? The complete solution around not just your virtualization platform is the manageability of that platform, and that's where System Center comes strong. So when we look at configuration of virtual machines, VLANs, because VLANs do have some constraints, as we know. So there's things that kind of hold us up and kind of limit us on what we can do with VLAN tags, virtualization platform with complete virtualization network now kind of gets away from having to use VLAN tags all the time. Allow flexible placement of virtual machines, even off-site. Kind of integrates nicely with the public cloud, the data centers, the data center boundaries, multi-tenant security and sandbox, right, and isolation. It kind of gives it the complete package, if you will, there. So what I wanted to do is I'm kind of moving over to working on getting my demo here to show you what I got for the demo. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my desktop here. I've got a remote connection to a provider, a host provider that I use, actually that our team uses, called itprosrock.com. And IT Pros do rock. And itprosrock.com is a host provider, once again, San Jose, California, that provides our kind of our platform that we can do demos on. So what I'm going to do is hopefully open this up and you can see it here shortly. Tell me if you see it on the screen. Do you see it? Or you did see it? So just go ahead and maybe type something in the I am just to let me know you're good to go.
It's still loading right now.
It's still loading, cool. So what I'm going to show you here in the demo and the demonstration is I'm going to show you a VDI solution that we have. I currently have 4 virtual machines running. We have lots of virtual machines running up here. And I'm just going to walk you through Hyper-V, Hyper-V Manager, give you just a 30,000 foot level view of what the interface looks like if you're brand new to it. If you've been using it for a while, then my goal is that hopefully you'll learn at least one thing here. But I'm just here to show you what we got and how this works. So
looks like it's up on my end, Blaine.
Okay, so I'll just go into the quick demo, and then I'm going to turn it over to Adnan Cartwright, and we're going to continue with some more demos. But as you can see up here on the right-hand side of the taxonomy, you'll see virtual machine, hard disk, floppy disk. What's that doing in there? This is Hyper-V 3. Why do we got floppy disk support? Well, first you can go in and create a virtual machine. You can go through the wizard here. I can create a virtual machine here, call it tech data. I can store it in a different location. Sometimes I'll create a nice folder structure where I can go ahead and keep my virtual machines in places where I know they are, and I can build out my kind of folder structure. But here we'll just take the default here. Say next, I give it some memory here. So give it 1024. Here's where I can use dynamic memory for this virtual machine. So when you're creating a virtual machine, it's going to be VHDX when I create that machine. Or I can either highlight it here and set it up, or in this case, if I go ahead, it's going to be a VHD file. Here I can connect to the network. Oh yeah, we've got a few network connections there. What's fun about this is when you take and you're using your virtual machine, but you use somebody else's virtual switching network. Not so fun, okay? But here's where basically we have to pay attention when we're selecting virtual networking. BB stands for Blaine Barton. That's my internal network. So any VMs that I create will be on the BB internal network. Some people have actually taken, when they're building something out, taken someone else's. So just be careful there. I'm not going to connect at this time. Here's where I can create a virtual hard disk. I can use an existing virtual hard disk. So if I download a VHD file from TechNet or from aka.ms/MS products, I can download the VHD file and I can attach it right here. Or I can attach a virtual hard disk later. So I can basically think of a virtual machine as, and this is the analogy that I always use, but think of a virtual machine as a chocolate-covered peanut M&M. So you got that peanut right in the middle, you got that chocolate on the outside, and then you've got this nice, flavorful, crunchy shell on the outside, right? You got any peanut M&M fans out there? So think about a chocolate-covered peanut M&M. The peanut is the virtual hard disk. So the peanut inside is the disk itself. The chocolate on the outside is this virtual machine shell that I'm building now. And that can be empty. You can have a plain M&M or you can have a peanut M&M. This is a plain M&M if I create it and don't attach a virtual disk, that'll be a plain M&M. If I go ahead and create a virtual disk, that'll become the peanut M&M. So hopefully you're with me. And then, of course, that crunchy shell on both M&Ms is that config file configuration. So I don't know. I try to use analogies that make sense. So right now I create a virtual hard disk in the virtual machine. I can use an existing virtual hard disk. These are peanut M&Ms down here. Attach a virtual machine later. It's going to be the plain M&M. Now, installing the OS, installing the operating system later, installing the operating system from a boot CD DVD-ROM. If I go ahead and select that, I can go ahead and I can physically capture the virtual, the floppy disk drive and capture that in the virtual machine and use that to install my operating system. Just make sure that that virtual machine or that CD DVD drive has been released from somebody else as an admin creating virtual machines. Because if it's captured in a virtual machine and you try to capture it in a virtual machine, it's going to get a nastogram and say that that has been utilized. So make sure you have access to the physical DVD drive when you're doing this. Or better yet, forget the DVD drive altogether and use an ISO file and just copy the ISO file down to the desktop and then mount that right there and mount the ISO and off you go, off and running. So once again, go next here. It's going to give you a rundown of everything you're creating. I'm doing a dynamically expanding. I checked the box there. So that's how you create a virtual machine. If I want to go back and create a virtual hard disk, I can run through yet another wizard. Here's we can say VHD, VHDX, and we have our choice there once again on the size of the disk. As you can see, 2 terabytes. We have a fixed size, a dynamically expanding size, and a differencing disk. So a fixed size is it's only going to stay that size. Dynamically, it's going to grow and expand with what you add with it. And then the differencing disk is our parent-child relationship, where you have a parent that is your main disk is read-only, and then you spawn, better term, you spawn children off of those. And really what you have is you have a child VM with the parent VM, and the child VM creates and holds what we call a differencing disk. It holds the differences in that between the parent and the child. I go ahead and say, fixed size, create a fixed disk, go through, make the name of the disk, and off I go. So just kind of showing you a few things here. I wanted to make sure I'm just popping over here to see. I saw my screen was flashing, like somebody was trying to desperately get a hold of me to ask me a question about what we're doing. So import virtual machine. Here's we go through the wizard. Point to the folder itself and import the virtual machine. We got the Hyper-V settings here. This is where I can go kind of a little bit deeper and get into live migrations and setting things up about how I want to be authenticated. If I want to, have some the keyboard on the physical computer or on the virtual machine, I can switch between those. How I can release the keys if I'm in a connection, a remote connection. NUMA spanning, so we would enable the virtual machines to span physical NUMA modes, and that's highlighted here. And then we've also got the GPU, if we're using Remote FX, to push a bunch of video over the wire. Virtual Switch Manager, yeah, lots of them here. I don't want to mess around with any of these. I will get severely beaten by the rest of my team, so I don't want to go ahead and start poking around in these virtual networks. But you can see we're pretty heavy duty here with what we're using here in the cloud technology over in the hoster. As you can see, here's all the virtual machines that are running currently in this stack. Right, lots of stuff going on here. Virtual SAN Manager. This is where we could go in and add a new virtual fiber channel and create that. So I'm just kind of walking the tree here. I can edit a disk. What that means is I go through here. I can select the location of the disk and go ahead and make changes to that disk, or inspect the disk to make sure that it's currently connected to my virtual machine properly. I can stop the service. I can remove the server. Be careful about that. Remove the server one. You have the settings within the VM. There's a couple different ways to get to the settings in the VM. You can go up here. You can connect to the VM. You can connect to it, or you can go up and simply start the VM. You may want to go ahead and start the VM without connecting and spawning that remote control session. If you've got lots of servers running in here, You don't want 28 screens up with 28 consoles to your 28 VMs running in the stack. You may have one or two that you're using at any one given time that you're spawning the remote session to those already connected, already running virtual machines. Settings is where I spend a lot of time, okay? Specifically when you're creating virtual machines and configuring things. When you create the virtual machine at the very beginning, here's where you can go and kind of alter and change things if you need to. And I guess I'm kind of guilty of using Matt's internal connection here. But just to show you what's capable of underneath this VDI network here that I'm running, as you see, I've got hardware acceleration. This is where the, once again, virtual machine queuing, enable virtual machine queuing is enabled, and also enabling the IPsec task offloading here as well. If I had the hardware, I could also do the SR-IOV and enable that within the configuration. Most of the time, in Windows Server 2012, as long as the hardware is supported, enabled virtual machine queue and enable IPsec task offload are typically enabled by default. Under advanced features, you can do a lot of other cool stuff like DCP guard, so that you don't get, guard drop DCP server messages from unauthorized virtual machines, router guard, port mirroring, NIC teaming, and providing spoofs on MAC addresses is all available through these settings. Memory, virtual processors. One of the, as we look into dynamic memory and looking at dynamic memory available, we can change, network adapters on the fly, but dynamic memory is kind of something you have to change out, adequately configure that, allocate that while the machine is on an offline state. But there's things you can do like add new hardware, add a new disk by coming in here and adding new, creating a disk while the virtual machine is currently running. My last and final demo is on Snapshots. They're my favorite. Snapshots are my favorite. I remember back in the day when I would, do NT4 demos, and I would notice that there would be smoke and fire coming out of the machine. Those days were bad days where you do a demo and something would go, get a blue screen or something happen, and you're kind of done for the day. As technology got better over my, over the career of doing this for 13, 15 years, things have just gotten so much better. Now we can do snapshots. What you're looking at here is an example of a large snapshot tree what we use for training, where we can jump in moments in time and show different snapshots of the configuration. And this one is from a member server, become an Active Directory, a domain controller, domain services, being domain joined, installing System Center Configuration Manager, being able to install SQL Server and going and jumping into certain places in time, being able to then jump down to the WDS, showing some of the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, showing the operating systems imported, drivers imported, language packs, building custom images. And so this is just an example of how we can run in a lab test environment and be able to build things out, test things. And like Adnan says, he's good at breaking stuff. He likes to break stuff. But he likes to break it, but then he's a break-fix guy. He likes to show you how things are configured. Well, here is kind of the same way. Use this as a test bed, and then actually go in, make configuration changes, and use this as a testing environment. So with that, I'm all done on that. Maybe we can go ahead and bring that deck back up. I'll go ahead and load that back up here. And then we'll go in and we'll turn it over. We're not done yet. We still have some more slides to cover. This was just a build out of multiple virtual networks in the same environment. Little shout out, if you're wanting free training, go to GoMBA. That's the Microsoft Virtual Academy. So you can go to aka.ms / and that is aka.ms/go MVA. As you can see, you can go to that URL. Also, you can go to my blog. Check it out. I do an IT Time TechNet Radio spot, aka ms/Blaine Martin, and then kick the tires on the stuff. Go and get a lab going. Go to aka.ms/MS products. Download either the ISO or VHD file on Windows Server 2012. and get going. So we're gonna come back and talk about part 3, automation and management. Adnan has a pretty cool demo on RSAT. We'll talk about the management, control, and automation. Of course, we talk automation, think PowerShell there. So be looking for that. So what I want to do now is I want to turn it over to JJ and talk about Microsoft programs and incentives. JJ?
Thanks, Blaine. Can everyone hear me okay? Hopefully you can. I'm actually in the Microsoft office down here in Tampa today over a wireless network, so hopefully I sound okay. But I wanted to make sure that all of you were aware of some of the Microsoft programs and incentives that are ending in the next 11 days. So if you have sold any Microsoft Windows servers in the last couple of months, there are some opportunities that I want to make sure that you're aware of, because it's so important for you to take advantage of things, especially as resellers that work with Tech Data and Microsoft. The first thing that I need you to be aware of, and unfortunately the enrollment date is actually closed, however there's still a chance if you have enrolled to get some rebates back, and here's where I want you to pay close attention. Take a look at, we've been talking about Windows Server obviously, but there's a lot of numbers on the board here. I want to talk about 2 areas. If you sell Windows Server, and you've already enrolled for the VAR rebate, you will be eligible for between 3 to 5.5% back directly from Microsoft if you sold the Windows Server Standard and the CALs that go along with it. But what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at the green area under incubation, and notice at the very bottom of that list, what does that say? It says Windows Server Data Center. So if you have recently sold a Windows Server Data Center to one of your customers, make sure that you're taking advantage of the VAR rebate coming back to you of up to at least 20% all the way up to 30% from Microsoft directly, and then Tech Data can help walk you through that process if you've enrolled and haven't taken advantage of it yet. So there is one more program available that you may not have enrolled for, because guess what? You haven't had to enroll for it. There wasn't a deadline, but there is one now that I want to point out, which is June 30th. So any deal that you have sold involving Windows Server 2012 Data Center or Windows Server 2012 Standard since April 15th, so anything from April 15th through June 30th, will allow you to take advantage of the Hyper-V surge offer. Blaine talked about some great benefits to Hyper-V today, and all you have to do is deploy Hyper-V to each one of your customers that you've sold Windows 8 to by September 30th. And you'll be able to be eligible for the deal that I'm showing up on the screen here. And what that is that for every Hyper-V deployment of Data Center, you receive $500. For every deployment of Windows Server 2012 Standard that you deploy Hyper-V on, you receive $150. So imagine a customer, for example, that had 5 copies of Windows Server 2012 Data Center. You already sold it to them. You've already made money off selling that version of Windows Server 2012. But now if you deploy the Hyper-V role on those boxes, you receive an additional $500 per box. So it's a great opportunity. Here's some steps on the screen for you. Make sure that you register the deal by 6/30, so by June 30th, and deploy by September 30th. All right, so I just wanted to go through that because, the time is of the essence. We've only got 11 more days left, folks. But with that, very short and sweet, let's go ahead and turn it back to John just for a quick summary on what Tech Data can do, and then we're going to go and talk about and do some demos.
Thanks so much, JJ. I appreciate that. Hopefully you guys are seeing the slide. But again, as I said, this is part of our Better Together series because, again, I think, our talents combined with Microsoft's talents, with your talents as our partners, makes us all better together. So you're going to see a lot more in this series. This is just, we're kind of kicking it off with the Windows Server and the Hyper-V and things that we're going to be talking about in this 5-part series. So always let us know. You're more than welcome to call myself or Alex or anyone else on the team to let us know how we're doing for you. I think Alex will probably set up a couple polls maybe towards the end if you want to stick around for that. But again, our people, our tools, and our programs, as JJ had kind of showed there, we think we combine it all and can help us all be better together, basically. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the next demo so we can kind of get into that. So Adnan, I think if you want to go ahead and take over and start that'd be great.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
So my name is Adnan Cartwright. I'm a server MVP with Microsoft. And initially, all that means is I love to blow stuff up. I like to get into the product, see what's going on with it, what makes it tick, and what makes it not tick. And fortunately, this go around with Windows Server 2012, I haven't found that much stuff to break, which is a good thing. It is a solid, robust system that Microsoft has released that has changed the landscape of IT. With it being said, I want to share out my desktop. And waiting for the desktop to come up and get ready to show. So with the release of Server 2012, the question is, what can't I do? The question is, the issue is I can't do this because I'm limited to hardware, I'm limited to storage, I'm limited to whatever resources or peripherals that I'm not able to acquire. With Server 2012, Microsoft has placed IT at the front, giving us the ability to be empowered to deploy any solution at any given time, regardless of the hardware, regardless of the infrastructure that we have. I don't know if you guys can see my desktop as of yet. I'm still waiting for it to come up.
Yeah, it's still loading for right now. I'll let you. Yep, it looks like it came up on one machine, and now it's up on the other.
Okay. I'm still waiting to see it on my end. But if you guys can see it, basically what I have here in my lab environment is two Hyper-V machines. So I'm demoing shared nothing live migration. There's no SAN in the middle, no storage, nothing. All I have is a DC to authenticate the identities between Hyper-V 1 and 2, and then all I have is a shared Ethernet resource with the Cisco router connecting the machines. So just to show you how simple it is with Microsoft and how they released Server 2012 with the shared nothing live migration. If I select my shared nothing machine, even though it's off, I can right-click it, select Move, hit Next, select my virtual machine, hit Next, and point it to Hyper-V 2. Hit Next, and I want to move everything pertaining to this virtual machine to a single location. So we'll hit Next again, and we'll browse out. And it already carried me over to a remote file over at Hyper-V 2. We'll hit the local disk C, and then we have a shared nothing folder. So I'll select that folder, hit Next, hit Finished. And it's off to the races. It actually went over to Hyper-V 2. No storage, no SAN, no nothing in between. So if we do the same here with client 1, our machine that's already on, if we right-click this and go through the same steps that we did, move everything, and this is an 8 gig file, so of course this is going to take a while, especially going over a Cisco router network. So we browse out, same remote file, C drive, shared nothing, select, and we hit Next, and let's drag this down here, and then let's move this up because I want to show you guys, and hit Finish. And I do have an error. And error is because I don't have the supported hardware. The thing with this is that if you're using two Hyper-V machines, and I intentionally meant to do this, they have to be utilizing the same hardware. Same processor, same memory allocation, same everything. The beautiful part about this is that if I turn this machine off, and then I decide to move it from there, and Hyper-V 2, and we hit Next, move everything over, we browse again to that same folder that's on Hyper-V 2, shared nothing, select folder, and we hit Next, we bring it down and we hit Finished. It's going to start moving that virtual machine over for us. Unfortunately, in my lab environment, I'm working from my home. So in my home, I'm not a corporate. I'm actually in my home where I don't have access to great resources, to that great infrastructure. I'm using a clone machine that I built from scratch. I went out to Target Direct and I built the machine. And then I'm using my laptop as Hyper-V 1 and the clone machine as Hyper-V 2. And I'm still able to do shared nothing live migration over this simplistic network. And the whole aspect of that is that if I can move and leverage this Server 2012 technology into my new environment that I have today, how much can you guys do in the environment that you host and take care of your customers there today? One more thing I do want to demo, as this is an 8 gig file going over to Hyper-V 2, I want to demonstrate replica. In order for me to demonstrate replica, and everything is simplistic with Server 2012 in terms of setup, if I right-click this server and I go to my Hyper-V settings here on server 1, I want to enable the server to be a replica server. So we'll enable this. We'll use Kerberos over port 80. We can't use HTTPS because we're not using a certificate authority, and we don't have certificates to deploy. So we'll take the defaults here, and then as we scroll down, we'll take it from any replicated authenticated server. So once we hit OK, it's going to warn us about a firewall exception that we have to open. So let's get that configured. And I'm on my start screen for Hyper-V 1, and if I type in firewall, and I head to my inbound rules, and then Hyper-V, here's my replica listener right here. We just want to enable this. That's it. This machine now is able to replicate out to another machine. That's simple. The next thing we do need to do to save interest of time is come here to Hyper-V 2, right-click this, and rinse and repeat. So Hyper-V settings, we're going to enable for replica, Kerberos, any authenticated server, hit OK, and we're going to bounce over. Just unpin this right quick, so we'll go up. So I can get over to Hyper-V 2. And we want to configure the firewalls here as well. So the same inbound rule with the Hyper-V listener. And we're going to enable this rule, and we can close this out. Go away. So Hyper-V settings, just to make sure, I wanted to make sure it was enabled. Okay, so we're all set and ready to go. If I head back over to Hyper-V 1, and I come here to my client where it says shared, this is Hyper-V 2, I'm sorry, Hyper-V 1, where my replica server is. If I right-click this virtual machine and I select Enable Replication, there's the wizard. And in Server 2012, Microsoft has this mantra, make it easy and they will come. And in Server 2012, they did indeed do that. So going through the wizard fairly quickly, we just select Next. We want to specify our replica server, which is HV2. We'll hit Next. And it automatically pulled in the data for us in terms of which server we're going to replicate to. It's going to compress that data over the network. We're going to select Next. Here's the path of where it's going to be placed. Hit Next. Recovery points, because this is a new virtual machine, we haven't done anything with it. We don't have any, but in your environment, you would decide the additional recovery points that can be brought over. The maximum is 15. You can't go any higher than that. So we'll just take the latest recovery point. We'll hit Next. Now, this is the most beautiful part here with Hyper-V Replica in Server 2012. I can send over the network, of course, but I can also send to an external media. I don't have to use the network to replicate my data over to a cold site or to a secondary site. I can put it on an external hard drive, have that hard drive shipped or walked over to where the site is if it's nearby, and then continue the replication right from there. So this is a cool new feature that they placed in with Hyper-V Replica and Hyper-V 3.0. So we'll send it over the network. We'll start it immediately, hit Next, and then we want to bring this down and hit Finish. And start and sending, and we're done, and it's merging. So if we head over to Hyper-V 2, our replica is all set here, ready to go. So we power this on. The replication is still ongoing. So once this is finished replicating, we'll be able to turn this on, and this will be our secondary replacement for replica. Another thing we can take a look at, if we right-click it and we head down to replication, we can see the health of it, where the replication primary server is, where it resides, the health of it, what was done from it. I mean, as detailed as it can be for a simplistic Hyper-V replica solution. I hope that this demo, quick in theory, was very useful to you guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in contact with me. With that being said, I'll be more than happy to turn everything back over to Blaine and the gang. Thank you.
Thanks, Adnan. That great demo, man. I mean, it's just kind of, it just works, right? I mean, putting these things together. And I just want to say a big shout out for John and Alex at Tech Data for having me and you and Ron in the past. Part one, being a part of the team here to deliver this content to you, as well as JJ, who kind of owns that relationship between Microsoft and Tech Data. So with that, I'll turn it back over to John.
No problem at all. I want to, again, thank everyone for attending. It looks like we still have some people out there. So if somebody has questions, we definitely are doing well on time today. Appreciate that from all the presenters. We did great going through things. So if we can open it up now to some polls, or if you want to IM some questions, or you can do that too. Alex, if you want to unmute everyone, if someone wants to ask a question, I know they can get a little crazy, but we like crazy. So we can go ahead and unmute that. It looks like we have a question for someone on how to download the presentation. Alex, do you want to get into that real quick? I know you're going to make it available for download. So.
Yeah, I can do that. If you want to click, it depends on which version of link you're using. Either at the bottom of the screen, you'll be allowed to download it, or at the top you'll see a little paperclip once I add it to the attachment section, and you should be able to download it.
And also, just to note, we are recording this, so we will have an ability for you to download the recording, and we'll send out that link so that you guys have that also. Any other questions? One more time, any other questions from anybody? It looks like we still have a few people here. Well, if not, like I said at the first, again, we thank you for your time today. If you do have questions, again, I know I can be shy sometimes too. More than welcome to call myself or Alex and talk to us. We're here 8:30 to 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. Again, 82031 option 2, or ask for the Microsoft engineers. And don't forget to download the link that was in the presentation. In Blaine's presentation. And use the product. That's the best thing I could tell you is download it and use. So, unless Blaine has anything or JJ wants to add anything, I think we can wrap it up.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. It's JJ.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and stop the recording, Alex.